Um, Hello everybody, welcome back. It's been a long time since we had an episode. Got my good friend Michael on again. We're talking baseball, free agency edition. Tonight we'll be focused on starting pitchers and some trade rumors going around. Michael, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hey, happy to be here.
Of course, Mets aficionado. I will plug his Twitter and Instagram, and his new Instagram account, in fact, about for all you
Yes.
Mets fans about Mets acquisitions and potential free agent acquisitions, etc. But anyways, let's get right into it. So of course, me and Michael were talking about Francisco Lindor. An update for all you guys. The This is confirmed, Michael. He will like almost 100% be traded by opening day. Um, and we've talked so much about this, Michael. What I want to hear is what do you think are his three most likely landing spots?
All right. Well, I think the Mets are one. I think the Mets are looking to add. They could be looking to add a big name. You have a lot of money coming in with the new Steve Cohen ownership. Uh, so they might be looking to make a splash there. And obviously, Francisco Lindor needs a contract. Contract's up at the end of this season. So I think that could be one name. Now, the Mets, I don't think they entirely need him. They have Andres Jimenez, who came up as a top prospect, came up last year. He's very good defensively, like very strong up the middle. For the bat, he's going to be okay. He'll be a decent contact hitter. Probably will never hit for much power, but he'll spray the ball all over. They also have Ahmed Rosario, another former top prospect, still pretty young, but he's not really been developing as much as the Mets really wanted him to. He's had some struggles in the field, which was his top selling point coming out. He's been really terrible at drawing walks. He might have drawn maybe like 2 or 3 all of 2020, and I'm not even exaggerating there. It was
Yikes.
it was rough, but so I think that's one. I do like Jimenez. Obviously, he's not the caliber player of Lindor. I think he's the better shortstop option of who's on the roster. Obviously, not the player of Lindor, not the superstar that Lindor is, but I think the Mets could want to spend some money elsewhere. That being said, if you are not a huge fan of the free agents, or you're Steve Cohen and you say, hey, we're $70 million under the luxury tax, other teams aren't going to spend, we're going to go get multiple big guys, I think you can do that.
Yeah. It's with all these guys on the market, I think Lindor is it's hard to say if he's your biggest. The thing is you have to make an effort to get him, right? Whereas Real Muto, all you do is you offer him some money, right? And he's on your team, right? But Lindor, it's you take his contract for this year and then you have to re-sign him probably, right? And you're trading prospects too. Um so, you know, it's an extra loop for an acquisition to get him. Which I think is interesting when you compare him to, potentially acquiring Real Muto, and George Springer, or Trevor Bauer, is you have to give up prospects and then take his contract, whereas Bauer, Springer, and Real Muto are all free agents, and you just sign them to a contract. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I think is kind of interesting. But another shortstop I want to talk about that's been in trade rumors, or honestly in general, just the Colorado Rockies organization. You know, I just want to focus real quick on Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado. So first off, I don't know if you've heard, Michael, but I've heard Arenado being linked to the Dodgers several times this offseason. Um, and I know Trevor Story is being floated around. Obviously, his contract expires next year. I'm not sure about Arenado's contract, but he's being floated around in trade rumors. What, Michael, if you're the Rockies, what like what do you what do you do right now? What's your move? Do you keep both of these guys, and how do you build the team? Because you have two franchise players with Story and Arenado. Do you build around them? Do you tear the whole thing down? What are you doing?
The Rockies are a really, really interesting team, and I can't say I'm too familiar with them, but I know Arenado's contract is also really interesting because he's on a big deal. I think it's like 8 years. He signed a big extension, but if I'm not mistaken, he has an opt out after 2021, and that's
Interesting.
the key. There's been rumblings, he's not very happy in Colorado,
Oh, I know.
so he could just opt out.
Hmm.
So it's almost like he's a free agent in 2021. That's why there's been a lot of talk circulating around moving him now.
Yeah.
I would imagine he's more likely to be traded simply as someone who we know wants out, or at least we think he wants out. I do think he's a little older, um, and I think I've just heard his name being floated around a little more. I would imagine they do want to keep Story,
Yeah. Have to.
but I mean, I've said that if you're not winning, you should be trying to rebuild. I think it's really annoying when teams will just kind of float in mediocrity, and you have good pieces. You have Trevor Story, you have Nolan Arenado. I think Herman Marquez is
Freeland.
one of the most Freeland too, but
Yeah.
Marquez is one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball. So you'll get park adjusted stats that account for him pitching in cores. He's up there with the best.
Yeah,
But
Blackman, Dahl. I mean, they have good pieces.
have good pieces, but the problem is it hasn't really gotten them anywhere.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
at least for me, I think if they're not getting you anywhere, you have to say, all right, what are we doing wrong? How can we get better? And then you look at their prospect pool, which I also don't think is that great. The only name I can think of is Zach Veen, who's an outfielder just drafted out of high school last year.
Mhm.
And I do like Zach Veen. He's going to be a good hitter,
Spruce
especially
Creek.
in cores.
Yep.
But it's not like it's a farm system loaded with prospects.
Well, they do have Brendan Rodgers also, who has, also been a top prospect for a while. I don't know if he's a prospect anymore. Um, but he was a prospect with a lot of hype. For me, in my honest opinion, right now, right, looking at their rotation, you have Marquez, like we were saying, you have Marquez, you have John Gray, who's okay. What do you think about John Gray? Real fast.
I would need to do more research on him.
Yeah,
Again, I'm not too familiar with this team.
yeah, it's true.
I think better.
John Gray, Freeland. Um, I can't name any of their other starters to be honest. But maybe get another starter or two, and then I think you need to start loading your lineup with power bats like the Rays did, right? You gotta try and outscore teams. I know this is Michael, I know this is against the verbatim of our baseball code, which is build your teams around pitching, three strong starting pitchers, and great bullpen. But this is Colorado, right? And we got to think of the ERA and the ball. Just the. It's so hard for in Colorado to interpret statistics because they are not the same in Colorado because the ball travels farther and it's just harder, you know what I mean? Like, it's just harder
Yeah.
to interpret all this.
Well,
So
it's also with that stadium. It's not just that the ball travels farther. It's that to account for that, they had to make the fences really deep, which means you see a lot more extra base hits.
mhm,
Like it's kind of like there are more home runs than other parks there, but it's not by that much. It's really the overall offensive value that you see raised so much in
mhm.
cores.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's a good point because I didn't really know that, but I think I mean, and tell me, say if you agree with me or not, I feel like you go Tampa Bay Rays and you start filling your lineup, you take out the Ramuel Tapias, Ryan McMahon, Garrett Hampsons, the non-power hitters, and you start loading that lineup with power hitters and guys who can hit home runs. Because I feel like they've tried to draft really high pitching prospects and build their team around pitching, and it simply hasn't worked. And I feel like you gotta build your team around a really strong offense. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, power hitters are the player of the future, like the offensive build, right? You want a guy who can hit home runs. It's okay if he strikes out more. So, I mean, if you're going to build a team, you're going to build your lineup. That's probably a good way to do it. So, yeah, I'd agree there.
Yeah, I think if you're the Rockies, real fast, you want to look at like Jock Peterson, potentially getting Jose Martinez from the Cubs, maybe Mike Zunino in the offseason. Get guys who can hit home runs. Build the offensive power because you can't build a team around pitching in Colorado. They're doing like it's just
I mean, if you're not going to rebuild,
yeah,
you
exactly.
want to see essentially what have you been doing wrong? Where can you improve? And I think that's one way to do it.
I think it's that I think that for this year, if they want to contend, that's the best thing they're gonna do because you're not gonna build your team. You're not gonna beat the Dodgers by uh, acquiring starting pitchers and building your team around pitching. You gotta outscore them in Coors Field. That's my opinion. But anyways, aside from the trade rumors, let's get to the main part of the video, which is focusing on starting pitchers. So Michael, thank you very much, compiled a list of the top, how many was it, 10 starting pitchers?
Something like that.
Yeah, top 10 starting pitchers, most, the most relevant starting pitchers in this free agent class. So we're going to discuss all these guys and not going to try to take too long, but we're going to discuss potential landing spots, the value of the pitcher, how good they actually are, and
Yeah.
it's just stuff like that because it's really interesting. So first off, I guess we can, yeah, we'll go in order. This list is in order of
Alright.
most valuable.
I forgot the list. I probably have.
Oh, I have it. I have
done,
it. I have it up.
Okay, I've probably not done deep dives into all of them.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely going to be more familiar with some pitchers' games than others because I've been trying to do like scouting reports for my Instagram page. Is kind of how I've been like learning the players more.
Mhm.
So just a little caveat there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so starting off, obviously number one on our list, free agent starting pitcher, we have Trevor Bauer. Not much of an yeah, I mean, not much of an introduction for Trevor. I mean, he's a very interesting player. One that coming off of NL Cy Young, is very unlikely to re-sign with the Reds, making him, a free agent and someone who's going to be on a not in a Reds uniform next season. Some stats about Bauer. Obviously, he is so puzzling because in 2018 he had a very good year. Then 2019 he had a great first half with the Indians, and then on the Reds he was a disaster. But then of course he rebounded and won the Cy Young Award with the Reds in 2020. Of course, only 60 games, but as for me, me and Michael have debated about this a lot. I think Bauer is a top 10 pitcher right now. And I think he is a frontline number one ace. He is someone who I want pitching in a playoff game, and I would feel comfortable with starting game 7, starting game 1. And I say that for a multitude of reasons. One, he has proven that he can recover from failure. In 2019 with the Reds, he failed. He had a not horrific, but he was very bad with the Reds. And the next season he rebounded and won the